Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Slipping Out. In this one we're going to be taking a behind the scenes look at the survival horror game The Forest. Okay, so we begin on board an aircraft and as you can see our character has no head. Now the main reason for this is so there is no issues with the camera clipping through our face during movement and animations. It's just easier not to put one on there, or at least if they do put one on there, make it invisible to the camera afterwards. Also at this point there isn't a lot we can see of the aircraft around us as our character remains seated throughout the whole scene. So let's go and take a look at what's out there. You just saw a replica of our character sat across the aisle. That model is there even though I'm currently starting a single player game. If I was to join a multiplayer game, that's where either myself or another player would sit. The other characters on board, however, they look practically all the same, with only slight differences such as hair colour and different clothing. Weirdly, this gentleman is sat with his legs through the seat. We're going to be seeing him again in just a moment, but there's nothing really more to see further forward, so let's head to the back of the plane. Once we get here, it goes very dark. Well, that's actually because there's a black texture covering up what's behind here, so we'll just go ahead and pop on through and take a look. On the other side, check it out. Here are loads of objects that we're soon going to be seeing flying past us as they get sucked out of the aircraft. At this point I'd like to give a spoiler warning as parts throughout the rest of the video could potentially ruin the game if you are going to be playing through the story. That pretty much covers what's on the inside, but what does it look like from the outside? Alright, so for those who have played the game, you probably know what's going to happen next. For those who haven't, if you are still watching, I'm pretty sure from seeing this you can have a good guess. I certainly won't be getting on an aircraft that looked like this. When I spin the camera around, you can also see the black texture I was talking about, and a food tray. Let's do it. Let's take a look at the crash from the outside of the aircraft.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now crossing a zone of turbulence. Please return to your seats and keep your seatbelts fastened.
Just jumping back inside for a moment, there are a few key details that you may have missed as it does all happen so quickly. Like for instance how the front half of the plane folds over the back half, and also watch out for the guy who gets sucked out on the left. That was the plane crash from the outside, or certainly the best footage I could get of it anyway. What I've done here is make all the night light in the game much brighter, so you can get a better view of what happens from inside.
Flight attendants and cabin crew, please.
Next we see our boy Timmy get abducted by this crazy looking tribal person, and this is the only point in the game I can find when we can see facial hair on our model during the single player mode, although it does soon disappear. Unfortunately, there's nothing more I can show of this scene than we can already see, like for instance, where is Timmy taken, as after this the scene fades to black and I can only assume that the characters disappear as the game loads for us to begin our survival adventure. After this point, it's pretty much entirely on you if you choose to follow the storyline or just try to explore the island and survive as long as possible. Either way, you'll find yourself in all sorts of situations, from freezing snowy conditions to exploring the huge underground cave systems. There is lots and lots to do, and you're going to need to craft and base build to survive. Whether you spend less time building with more time exploring or building something more elaborate, you're going to need to protect yourself from the enemies, some of which, without me spoiling too many of them, are mutants. However, my point is, this was a strange choice of Slipping Out episode, as practically all of what happens during the game, however you play, you can see from the normal view, as there are no cutscenes or animations, except for the one at the start that we've already seen, and one at the end, which we'll come to shortly. Sure, I could show where the enemies come from and run off to, but you probably already guessed, they just spawn and despawn out of sight of the player, so nothing too exciting about that. However, that's not to say there's absolutely nothing to look at in this game. For instance, I was interested in what is inside the cave systems before we enter them. At first sight, you may be forgiven for thinking this is the end of the cave as it is now, before it loads up as we enter. But actually, this is just the old black texture trick again, to give the appearance of darkness. Beyond this, we can find more of the cave path that we follow hidden away. There are also loads of items and objects that we can find floating beneath the map, seemingly for no reason, but these are all of course objects that we would eventually come across if we explored all of the different caves. So what about the other way around? What happens to the island as we go further underground? Surprisingly, most of it stays the same, and I genuinely thought a lot of the terrain would disappear, but it seems the only major effect going underground has is the changing of the lighting, which fades across the whole map even during the daytime. Getting closer to the end, there were a couple of cool developer tricks and details that I wanted to show whilst inside the underground lab. First of all, I was curious to find out what was behind the door that leads into the lab and how this area loads up. Once inside, one of the first rooms is the dining area. Now, we have seen this trick done before in previous episodes, but this is a great example of how to make a place look a lot bigger than it really is. Alright, pretty freaky stuff. There we see Megan turning into a mutant, but I was curious to find out where those limbs that come out of her mouth appear from. As you can see, if I move the camera forward, they are already inside her model. Another little trick is the teleporting elevator trick. Here we go from underground to the sky platform in under a second as we teleport from one elevator to the duplicate above. Whilst we're up in the sky platform, if we take a look at the cave system underground, we can now see a lot more of the places we have recently visited. On to the endings. Now, for those who want to get to the end and see these for yourself, I say these as there are two alternate endings depending on your choice, then I don't blame you if you want to turn off now and maybe come back after completing the game. For my viewers who already have, then let's continue with the first one that I chose, which was not to crash the plane. I did wonder, however, just how detailed the plane would be, even though we can barely see it. Probably the more exciting ending to the game, and the one that does finish it off with the credits and without the ability to continue surviving, is if we crash the plane. So naturally I had to find out where it came from, and I was shocked at just how far the plane does come from. I genuinely expected it to spawn just around the side of the windows at an angle that the player can't see. But take a look at this. It's that far out of the map that when we get to it, the whole map behind us disappears from sight. In fact, at one point I nearly gave up looking for this, as I didn't think it was going to appear this far out. Unfortunately, the last two cutscenes seem to be pre-rendered, which therefore brings me to the end of the episode. I really hope you've enjoyed the video. Depending on how this one does could be the difference between whether I carry on making these slipping out videos, as they just seem to take so much of my time and effort to create. I'm talking many hours, and a lot of them don't get the viewing figures and likes to make them worthwhile. So I'll be monitoring the analytics on this one to see what happens and deciding which avenues I can take the channel down. It's kind of make or break time for me with these slipping out episodes really. But anyway, thank you as always to all my viewers who keep coming back and supporting the channel. I love you all, and until the next video, as always, take care.